A spectacular view of chilly and snowy Washington, D.C., where events surrounding the inauguration of the 47th President of the United States are about to get underway. It's all leading to the U.S. Capitol, where President-elect Donald J. Trump will make history as the second former U.S. president ever to return to power, following in the footsteps of Grover Cleveland, taking the oath of office in the Capitol Rotunda during a very rare indoor inauguration prompted by concerns of dangerously cold weather. If you're just joining us, I'm Jake Tapper with CNN's special inauguration coverage, and we're going to soon get our first glimpse of President-elect Trump and First Lady Melania Trump as they kick off the pomp and ceremony of this new day in a new era in the history of American politics. We expect President-elect Trump to leave the presidential guest quarters at Blair House, which is just across the street from the White House, just minutes from now, along with soon-to-be First Lady Melania Trump and members of the Trump family. Once the Trump family leaves Blair House, they will begin this monumental day by taking a brief drive through the city to attend a traditional inauguration morning service at St. John's Episcopal Church. Sometime after that service ends, they will head to the White House, where the Bidens will be waiting to host them for tea and coffee, reviving an inauguration day tradition that didn't happen 4 years ago. The outgoing and incoming presidents demonstrating that this inauguration is a peaceful transition of power. We're told that they will ride together to the U.S. Capitol along with their wives for the inauguration, as also has been tradition and also did not happen 4 years ago. Let's check in with Caitlin Collins on Capitol Hill. And Caitlin, tell us about where you're positioned in the Capitol right now and why.
Yeah, Jake, obviously, typically for the inauguration, we would be outdoors on the west front of the Capitol like we were 4 years ago, even during COVID, in a much more scaled down inauguration. This time we're inside because of the weather. And this was a decision that the Trump team made just a few days ago. Despite months of planning to have this happen outside, they did so because of the weather and putting all of their guests who were in town outside along the parade route. They were worried about their safety. And so now that everything's been moved indoors, it's scrambled plans quite a bit. And that also determines who is going to be able to actually watch the inauguration in person. Trump and J.D. Vance will be sworn in inside the Rotunda. I'm told there's about 750 or so seats that have been positioned in there, kind of cramped maybe is a better word, because they are trying to get as many people as possible, given there are so many dignitaries here, VIPs, major donors to Trump, in addition to the cabinet and lawmakers and senior congressional staff here as well, Jake. I'm inside Emancipation Hall, and there's about 800 or 1,800 seats or so behind us. That is where you're going to see all of the other guests who did not get a seat inside the Rotunda hang out here. But they will get to see Trump in person. He's going to come over here after he delivers that inaugural address, Jake, and speak to people. And so they will get a chance to see him in here. But obviously things have just changed so much because this is the first time in decades that the inauguration has been held inside instead of outside. And Jake, just in terms of what we're looking at as the modern presidential traditions that are being carried out today, one thing I learned last night is that President Biden does plan to leave President-elect Trump a letter in the Oval Office on the Resolute desk, as is tradition. Obama did so for Trump. Trump actually did so for Biden 4 years ago, despite flouting so many of the other norms, like a peaceful transfer of power. And I am told Biden will leave Trump a letter. Of course, what it says remains to be seen, Jake.
Yeah, 4 years ago, President Biden came down from the residence into the Oval Office. He opened up the drawer of the Resolute desk, found the letter, read it, told his aides it was surprisingly gracious. We'll hear more about the letter that Biden wrote Trump perhaps later today. Let's turn to CNN's Pamela Brown. She's outside St. John's Episcopal Church, where President-elect Trump is heading any minute. Pamela, what can we expect from the service?
Well, we're expecting soon-to-be Vice President J.D. Vance and his family to arrive here at St. John's for the service. And then, of course, soon-to-be President Trump, Melania Trump, and the entire family, I'm told by a source familiar with the plans, will be arriving here for this traditional Inauguration Day service. Now, even though this is something that many presidents in the past, starting with President Roosevelt, have done to start the day, there's going to be some differences today than what we saw 8 years ago when Donald Trump came here for the service for his first inauguration. There will be no sermon, I'm told by a source familiar, and the Reverend who will be leading the service today did confirm that. Also, President-elect Trump is expected to sit in the first pew, the first row of the church, which will be the first time in 92 years that will happen, according to Reverend Fisher. So that is certainly a change. No sermon as well. So no sermon. Soon-to-be President Trump will be sitting in the first pew. The Reverend said that today it's going to be a time of quiet reflection, peace, calm before the busy festivities here for Inauguration Day. That's really what he wants with this traditional service this morning. And we will see if Donald Trump comes over here to take any of our questions. Obviously, a lot of news already happening this morning with those preemptive pardons for President Biden. Jake?
All right, let's go now to someone who's been part of Donald Trump's inner circle since Mr. Trump's first presidential campaign back in 2016. Let's bring in Jason Miller. He's now a senior advisor to the Trump-Vance transition. Jason, welcome. In his first inaugural address, President Trump painted a picture of what he called American carnage. What kind of tone, what kind of language will Americans hear from him in his speech today, his inaugural address?
Well, Jake, good morning. It's an honor to be with you. Today is going to be different from the aspect that President Trump is going to begin immediately laying out his plan of action. So typically with inauguration speeches, you have incoming presidents who give a lot of lofty rhetoric and empty promises that ultimately never are fulfilled. But we've seen what President Trump can do already in his first 4 years. And so for only the second time in our nation's history, we have a returning president. And so President Trump will lay out the very real challenges that are facing our country, but he's going to immediately go into his solutions and his plan of action to fix it. That's the difference with this. It's more programmatic, talking about this revolution of common sense. And so we're going to start sending executive orders immediately after the president is sworn in. When he gets over to the Capital One Arena a couple hours later, he'll be signing more executive orders. We're going to secure the border, get the energy production going. But Jake, this is about action. This is going to be unique from anything we've ever seen before.
So let's talk about the multiple executive orders. Do you know how many he's going to be signing exactly, and what they will be specifically doing? I mean, I understand the general subjects about energy and the border and the like, but can you be specific?
I can get a little bit more specific. The two main buckets really are about securing the border and also with the increase in our energy production. But some of these will be putting President Trump's first-term border policies back in place. Successful policies such as Remain in Mexico or Stopping, Catch, and Release. Those will be a couple of the big ones. Additionally, we talk about opening up some of the permitting again when it comes to energy production. There'll also be a number that go through and really reform government and get it back to what its core function should be, making it more of a meritocracy, getting rid of some of the DEI and other woke nonsense that we've seen. But again, if you liked President Trump's policies, especially on the border from the first term, I think you're going to love what you see today. You know, Jake, when we talk about deportations, 87% of Americans approve of what President Trump wants to do with deporting illegal criminals, illegal aliens who are in this country. 2/3 of Americans support his border policies overall, even a majority of Latinos. We know already that there are 1.3 million people in this country illegally already approved and processed for deportation. That's going to start right away. We're going to focus on the criminal illegals that are here, and I think we're going to make our communities a lot safer.
President Biden, as you may know, within the hour, we just learned that he's issued preemptive pardons for former Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Milley, Dr. Anthony Fauci, as well as members and staff of the January 6th Select Committee, as well as law enforcement officers that testified before the committee. What is President-elect Trump's reaction to that? And will he respect those pardons?
Well, Jake, obviously it happened just a few minutes ago. I have not yet had the chance to speak with President Trump about that. But quite frankly, this is President Trump's day. This is the day for the 77.3 million people who voted for President Trump. Obviously, he won 312 electoral votes and won the popular vote. We've had nothing but a disaster for the past 4 years with Joe Biden. Joe Biden is on his way out. We're going to have real leadership back in the White House. And quite frankly, with President Trump, we've already seen the success with the Middle East peace deal and everything he's been doing even before he is sworn in. So finally, we're going to have strong leadership in place. And let's talk about what we're going to start doing to improve people's lives and not about the disasters of the past 4 years.
The president-elect is saying that he plans to pardon some of the people convicted for their roles on January 6, 2021 today, he said. Can you be more specific about that? Will he pardon anyone convicted of violent offenses?
Well, Jake, that's not something that I've been privy to, as I'm not part of the incoming White House counsel's office or with the DOJ. But we've made very clear in the past that President Trump has said we're going to look through each of the cases individually. We've also said that definitely do not support in any way, shape, or form anyone who's been violent towards law enforcement or things of the nature. But there have been a lot of people who've been treated unfairly. So they're going to look on a case-by-case basis. I'm going to leave that to the White House counsel's office as well as the DOJ.
Jason, are you going to serve in the Trump administration?
Well, my focus right now is make sure I get the rest of the nominees through. I think the confirmation hearings that went last week were pretty fantastic. Pete Hegseth did great, Pam Bondi, Scott Bessent, Kristi Noem. We have a busy week. We'll have both Elise Stefanik and Doug Collins coming up tomorrow, a whole bunch more over the next couple of weeks. And then after we get our nominees through, then we'll figure out exactly what's next for me. But I'll still be part of the president's team. We'll just see what exactly that looks like.
All right, Jason, thanks so much. Good to see you. Have fun today, and congratulations.
Hey, thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
All right, Dana Bash.
Well, I thought it was interesting that he did not weigh in at all on what President Biden did on his way out the door, that he said that this is Donald Trump's day, that he wants to focus on all the things that Donald Trump is doing, which is sort of un-Trumpian.
Well, it's smart by Jason.
But it's exactly what I was going to say. But I have to say, and I hope I didn't disrupt you or distract you, as you started to talk to him, I talked briefly to Anthony Fauci, who got one of the pardons, who said he is very appreciative of what President Biden did. He said, and again, he has done nothing wrong, but there are baseless accusations against him in his view, and he has been very worried about what it will mean for him, and even more so for his family. And I just want to add one more thing. As we're talking, I got a text from Tim Heaphy, who ran the January 6th committee, who says that he had no warning, came out of the blue. He didn't want a pardon, but he understands the president's motivation in granting it.
On the right side of your screen, you see images of Blair House, which is right across the street from the White House. Any moment we expect President-elect Trump and First Lady-to-be Melania Trump to come out of there. I'm not sure if we're going to actually see images of them, given all the security tents and like, but we are expecting them to depart Blair House on their way to St. John's Church any minute now. One of the things that, unfortunately, a pardon cannot do is stop the death threats that Mark Milley and his family and Anthony Fauci and his family and the members of the January 6th committee and the staff and the police officers who testified are getting. And that is something that I think it would be great if this was the end of and the era of political violence against Democrats, Republicans, everyone. But that is one of the things that I think is kind of less discussed when it comes to the demonizing of people like General Milley. The idea that these people, like, ever since they have been named as enemies of Donald Trump, and I'm not blaming Donald Trump for the threats, but once they're perceived as enemies, Donald Trump's fans go after them. And it happens on the other side, too. I'm not suggesting it doesn't.
But it's a split-screen experience, as it often is with Donald Trump. I mean, on the one hand, you hear Jason Miller talking about what Trump wants to be able to do on day one that he promised to do in terms of policy, in terms of immigration, in terms of the economy and energy. And then on the other hand, there is this specter of retribution that he also promised, by the way. And so both of these things are happening at the same time. And the problem with elections, in a way, is that you have voters who vote for a candidate, and you have a candidate who says all kinds of things, and you don't know which of those things are at the top of the list. But I think we do know in this last election, Americans want the president to come in and address their core needs of survival, housing, food, safety, and security. The other stuff that is actually related to Donald Trump's personal grievances, I don't know how much of that they care about. I don't know how much they want the government going after Dr. Anthony Fauci, who served this country honorably for decades, General Mark Milley, who served Trump and the country honorably for decades. So Trump is really playing both sides of this coin. And I do think that it's important, even while Jason didn't want to talk about it, you cannot ignore it because Trump has said it, he's promised it. And this is going to be, as Tim Naftali said today, both sides of the January 6th picture are going to be on display today if Trump follows through on his promise to pardon people who played a role in the insurrection 4 years ago.